Good evening, everybody.
Oh,
Good evening.
I was expecting I don't know why I was expecting like a school kind of chorus of good evening. Welcome to tonight's Freedom Thinking Community Group. Thanks for coming. I can see we've got all the different parts of the world. Lancashire, down south, up north, Scotland, down south, Lancashire,
Greater Manchester.
Greater Manchester, whatever, Wigan boy. I know what looks like Jenny's actually my mother downstairs, but she's not come too far away. And Gateway, we have no idea where you're from. But welcome everybody. Yeah. What's that?
I didn't know if people had seen, we haven't been actually writing a blurb for a group for a while. So this week we thought we would. And then we're going to have Kate speak, because I'd kind of put this out on Facebook, and then it had occurred to me to ask Kate to share some of the stuff she'd been sharing with us around what she's seen since coming across the principles. Everyone.
Oh, that's how you do it. Welcome, Mr. T.
So this week we'll be talking about the power behind the realization that we really don't know anything. How much time do we spend suffering our beliefs, ideas and concepts, battling with others, wanting them to see the same as we do, creating unnecessary pain? Realizing that we don't know, we just idly believe, allows us a new perspective, a more open mind, a mind free to think again and again and again, which in turn opens us up to a different kind of conversation, a more neutral standpoint, and ultimately more peace and love in our lives. Kate, I know you can't stay for too long. I'd love it if you could just share some of what you've been seeing, because when we spoke, it felt like everything that's been coming up with you has been around that subject, like putting down what you think you know and thinking again and not going with the first thought and that kind of stuff, and then stuff that you've noticed with Georgia. So we'd love it if you don't mind, you'd share with everyone. I'll just unmute you. Hang on.
That's it. Jenny shut you up.
You might have to oh, there you go.
I get a choice. I can stay muted if I want. Oh, now you're mute.
I'm muted. I was just saying, we know that's impossible, Kate.
The funny thing is, I hadn't actually read your blurb at all, but what you just said then is what we've been going through. I'd say probably in the last big time in the last week, because I think some of you have heard me speak before, and so you'll know that my daughter, who's actually listening, so she said, are you going? You changed your mind. She might be listening. So she said, can I listen? And I was like, oh, really? No, she's going to go. And actually then I said, yeah, you can listen, because she knows what I'm going to say anyway. But so she is going back to school tomorrow. And over the last, 3 years or something, she's been very anxious about school, to the point where before lockdown, she was refusing to go to school altogether, which was pretty stressful. And so that's really why I came across the 3 principles, because nothing else was working. CBT and counselling things didn't really have any effect at all. Probably because there's nothing wrong with her. And I think she knew there was nothing wrong with her. She was like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing CBT? And can I go? And so CBT, so 3 principles, the first thing that sort of made sense. And so then we went into lockdown, and hooray, Georgia's not anxious anymore. She's not going to school. And then now she's going back to school again. So this journey that we've been on this week, even just this week, on Saturday, she had this, she doesn't even see the thought. It's so habitual, this thought, which is, I can't do school. Or, she goes, she has the thought, and the feeling just erupts. and it's this anxiety, and she's there, and she's upset, and she's saying, you know, I need to be homeschooled, and she's crying, and she's up half the night, and Georgia is what she is actually, she's my anchor, because she shows me. So because I've seen what I've seen, I can't unsee it. So I know that this is coming from her thinking. But she's showing me, when she does this, she's showing me how real it looks. And so at that point, you know, for me to say, oh, Georgia, it's all an illusion, just would not be helpful. And I would not get a good response. I've done that before. That doesn't work. And so at this point, all I can do is I can say, there's a possibility this is coming from your thinking, because school's next week and this is Saturday. But, you know, right now, it's just go with it. You know, it's not going to kill you. It's a feeling. Just go to sleep. And so the next day, she wakes up and she's still in a bit of a low mood. And so just leave her. And then actually her mood lifts, because it always does. Being spiritual beings, you know, spirits go up and down and up and down. And when you know that, you're sort of not worried about it. You're not freaked out about it. You just know it just goes up and down. So, and you know it's going to come up, and it always does. So her mood comes up. And then I sort of said, did you see what happened last night? You know, you were sort of living next week. You were creating this reality but you were at home in bed, and yet at the same time you were at school. That's actually quite cool. But the next night she did the same thing again, and she had this thought, and then she doesn't even see, and it creates this feeling, and then she gets anxious, and she did the same, you know, and she's up half the night, and she's, you know, in a complete state of panic, and you need to homeschool me, and I'm not going to school, you know. The great thing is that I'm not feeling any of it. I mean, it's that in itself is amazing, because before it would be like Georgia would strap into this roller coaster ride, and I would just strap myself in next to her, you know, and we'd sit there together and we'd go up and down. It would be exhausting, you know, and now I know it's not very nice. It's not very nice for her, but I know it's ultimately not going to hurt her. It's just feeling, and she's okay. So I'm not feeling it with her, which is good, which maybe makes me a bit calmer. So then the third night, this time I could see it. I can always see the thought as it comes. And then she starts to feel it. And I said, whoa, I said, just okay, let's just stop for a minute. Okay. And you're at a crossroads here. I said, you know where you're going to go. If you go that way, you've been there. And I said, it's a funny thing, you know, it's a funny thing with our thinking. I said, when we go walking in Wales, and there's a path that's really nettly, and it's full of, you know, and we're all wearing our shorts and there's nettles, we go, hang on a minute, let's not go that way. Let's just, everyone reverse, we'll go another way. But when it's like with our thinking, for some reason, when we think about things and then we create this feeling and it looks real, we just carry on. You know, even if the feeling is crap, we just carry on in that direction, because we think that, oh my God, because it feels real, then it's real, and then I've got to think about it a bit more because I can get myself out of it through my thinking. And I said to Georgia, you can go down that path if you want to. That's fine, because it's gonna make you feel bad, but it's just a feeling, so it doesn't really matter. I said, or you can just choose something different. And for the first time, she just sort of stopped and she started to listen. And actually, I think that really is the first time that she's properly started to listen. Oh, your disc is almost full. And I said, I said, what you've got a choice to do here is, you know, go down that path, or you can just do nothing. You don't have to do anything with the thought comes, and or you can just sort of, I said, you could just leave it alone. you don't have to do anything with it, because once you see, you just don't have to, you don't have to do what you've been doing. What you've been doing looks familiar, and so there you keep doing it, but you don't have to. So she just sat quietly for a minute, which in itself is quite a big thing. And then the thought came back, and then the feeling came back, and then she said, "Mummy, can you just read to me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So, I got a magazine out, and we were reading some gossipy crap, and that was making her laugh. And then Sydney Banks, I had the Sydney Banks book there, and I hadn't read it for ages, and I said, "Look, pick a page, just open the book anywhere." And she happened to open it on the chapter that said "Live for the Now," or so something like that, "Living in the Now" or "Live for the Now," and that's all it said on the page, is "Live for the Now." And I went, ha! So Sydney Banks is telling you something here, Georgia. And she laughed at that as well. And then she just went to sleep. And so the next day, because I know that I've heard George Pransky say about learning curves. I've heard something about learning curves, and I thought, wow, this is a learning curve. So I said to George, I said, because it doesn't really matter what we do, but we do have the option to learn each time and ponder and think what happened. So I said, what happened last night? And she went, "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "Well, it looked to me last night that you chose something different." And I said, "And now that you've done that, you've always got the option to do that. You can't unsee that." When it's about the 3 principles, people talk about these huge realizations that they have. And some people have big, mind-blowing realizations. And some people just see things or they do something and then they think about it. And I said, you've done something different. And that means you've always got the choice to do something different. You did something different, and that created space. So it also created space for, I said, when you're holding on to that one thought that keeps coming to your head, there's no more space for other thoughts to come in, but if you let go of that one, I said, you don't have to suddenly be thinking, school's going to be great, and I'm going to love it, and I'm going to get out of the car, and it's going to be this, this, and this. I said, I'm not suggesting that you do that, because that's not real, and that's pretty hard to do. But you do have the option of doing nothing. And when you do nothing and you get calm, sometimes there's space for fresh thinking or other stuff to come along. And so she was listening to this, and just the fact that she's listening, she's probably listening outside the door, I don't know. But the fact that she's listening in itself, because before there's been a lot of this, not listening, not interested. And I think she can see, I want a bit of what Mama has. I want a bit, because she's not getting all stressed out like I am. And maybe there's something there. And I said to her, I said, when we went to see Dave and Jen, I said, it reminds me a bit of the parable of the sower, which I always remember that from school. And I said, I think that you were maybe, and then she filled in the blank. She said, rocky ground. And I went, yeah, slightly rocky ground, in that you could hear what Dave and Jen was saying, and it made sense to you, but there was so much anxiety going on, and it just didn't really sink in. Whereas for me, I had this realization, and it all made sense, and I started to feel it. And I said, it just feels to me that now you're more fertile soil. You're sort of starting to hear. And I said, you're 14 years old, because I'm coming across this at 48, you're 14 and you're starting to hear something which most people actually don't know. And I said, the fact that, if you start to look at it, I said, you are what you've just done for the, look at what you've just done in the last 2 nights or 3 nights. I said, you've sat at home in bed and you have created, through your thinking, you've created this reality. You're at school. You are getting out of the car, or actually you're not getting out of the car because you're too terrified to get out of the car. And then you're imagining what mum's going to say because you didn't get out of the car. And then what are your friends going to think because they can see you crying in the car. And you can feel it, and you can see it, and you can smell it. And I said, can you see how powerful that is? Can you see what a gift that you have? I mean, you might not want to use it that way, but in itself, it's incredible, the power of thought that we have. And that makes you think, who are we? Who are we that we've got that gift, that we can do that with our thinking? I mean, it's amazing what we can do with our thinking. And, it's not like because I understand this, I don't do it as well, because I do it. But when I do it in a way that makes me feel bad, I'm not so fearful about it. I sort of know. I mean, when we were in Wales last month, so we went to Wales, and I was there with the kids, and Pete wasn't there, and I was tired, and I was just in a low mood, and a thought popped into my head, which was, you've made this really bad decision to go and live in Somerset. You should be living in Shropshire, which is where I grew up, next to Wales. And it was like, it reminded me, I said, this is like being an alcoholic, because it's like I'm having a drink. I know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And I know where it's going to take me. It's going to take me where I don't want to go, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And I don't care what Dave and Jen would say, because I'm just going there. And I started to create this reality, and I started to imagine where the kids would have gone to school, and my friends, and I went off on one, and it made me feel really shit, because I'd made all the wrong decisions. And why did we move to Somerset? And so Pete arrived, and I went, Pete, I'm exhausted. You've got to help me out, because I know what I'm doing. I've done it anyway. We shouldn't be living in Somerset. We should be living in Shropshire. We've made a big mistake. And I said, I know that I'm creating this, and Pete is quite clever, because he just said, well, it's quite simple, Kate. Let's just move. Let's move to Shropshire. And I went, what? And he went, I said, I can relocate. People relocate all the time. Let's just go. And I went, okay, thanks. I said, that's all you needed to do. So it was like a sort of fairy liquid bubble, and it just evaporated right in front of me, because I didn't want to, none of it was real, but I'd created it, and it felt really real, and it made me feel terrible. But then when he said that and it just evaporated, it was like the whole thing just went. I was like, okay, cheers. Yeah, thanks, Pete. It's gone now. We don't have to talk about it anymore. But we do it with our thinking the whole time. And the fact that we can create these realities that seem so real, for me, it's just like, that's what points to the fact that we are mystical beings, that we're spiritual beings, or we are, there's an intelligence, because, I mean, that's a gift that we have. And once we see that we have it, then we can play around with it, but we don't have to be in fear of it. And then Georgia, so she goes back to school tomorrow, and for the last, since we talked about it on Monday, she's been pretty neutral. We haven't had any more sort of upsets or stuff going on, and she sort of seems more willing to just see what happens. And I think in a way she can, but so we went away last week, and we were doing this cliff jumping, and which is something that I really hate. So there's a thought. And she and the kids are, so Georgia, I mean, it was higher than the video looked that I showed Dave. And Georgia was at the top of that atop of the rock, and I was like, how did you get off? How did you step off the edge? And now it says my internet is unstable. Can you hear me? And she said, yeah. And I said, how did you get off the edge? And she said, well, I had to just let go of my thinking. And I was like, okay, so you know this is a good, you knew in that situation to let go of your thinking. So I think we have it within us, but we don't always see it. So she said, if I thought about it, I would never jump off. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna have a go. And I went off a slightly lower one, but in the car on the way there, I thought about it, and I literally lived this jump the whole way there, because I know that I hate jumping off high rocks, and I felt it, and I created, I had that lurching feeling in my stomach, and I was jumping, and I could feel it. By the time I arrived, I had a stomach ache. I was like, oh my God, I've jumped off that rock so many times now. I don't even need to do it. And then we got there, and Pete laughed. He said, you just walked off the edge. I was like, yeah, I just had to just do it and get off the edge. But again, it just, and in a way, that's what this is about. It's just like letting go. Just letting go of everything that we think that we know. Everything we think that we know about life, if we just can let it go. And this isn't about, because Georgia said to me the other day, she said, but I'm starting to hear this now, but I need more time to get ready for school. I need more time. And I said, this isn't about time. There's no time. When it comes to the principles, it's not about how long, it's not, people can look at this for years and years. It's about a willingness to let go of all the familiar way we do things. We let it go, then it can be like that. There's no time involved. I said, Georgia, you could do this now. You can do it, jump off. It's now. It doesn't have to be, there's time, it's got nothing to do with this. It's a willingness to just let go and see that maybe there's something else. I think that was all I was going to say, really.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, love. You covered so many things there. And we love listening to you talk. I know whenever Kate rings up, we spend bloody ages on the phone chattering away, but we love what you've come to see about life, and we know that Georgia is just one of the most beautiful kids. I remember she wouldn't get out of the car for us at our end. So when she came up, driven all the way up from Somerset to Cumbria. Can you hear me all right? Is it loud enough?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool. Driven all the way up from Somerset, and Georgia wouldn't get out of the car. But I knew she liked climbing, so I just went down, sat in the car, and I remember you talking about this sensitive kid, this sensitive child. And you were telling us about how you'd written letters and sent books into the school about this sensitive child and how to deal with a sensitive child. And I just remember saying to you, she's not being very sensitive right now. I think she's just being downright stubborn. And so I walked out and I sat in the car, got in the car, and I sat down next to her and said, do you want to climb a tree? Yeah. Well, you have to get out of the car if you want to climb a tree. Can't get out of the car. So I went and got me tree surgery kit, and I put a harness on her, put a rope up the tree. I watched that kid scale this tree like it was nothing. Absolutely. She is a phenomenal climber. I mean, phenomenal climber. She's got a proper gift. She was up this tree. I said, how do you feel? She went, good. She must have been 40 foot up, stood on this branch. Yeah, good. Like, you feel safe? Yeah. You're comfortable? Yeah. No anxiety. No. It's like you are genuine in a life-threatening situation. If something was to go to tits up now, you're knackered. And she's like, yeah. But the fear of school was something that, well, that's a totally different thing. And it was such a beautiful thing, because when Kate came, it's like, it just so happened it was Kate that heard in this instance. And but when Kate heard, the parenting changed. And I remember you saying, oh, I've seen what I've created. I've seen what I've created. And it wasn't then that you went on to beat yourself up for it. You didn't go on to beat yourself up and go, oh, I'm a shit mother, blah, blah, blah. You just saw what you created and you started to create different. But I think the one thing that you took away from it was that George is all right. That George is ultimately all right when she is not in one of these like spaces within her mind and lost in her own mind. Like, she's all right. She's not like that all the time, and therefore you can work with that. If somebody was like that all the time, which there isn't anybody on earth who gets stuck in the same reality for the entirety or duration of life. But when we know that, I think it was, what is it you said? No, it was something you said about, I thought I wrote it down. There you go, yeah. Like the fairy liquid bubble analogy. You know, it's present until it isn't. And just knowing that, you know, just knowing that our realities change in a moment has to, if we start to kind of orientate ourselves to look in this direction, has to start to change the way we see reality and life itself. And it would be one from a far more inline perspective with how life truly works. I really like that analogy, your fairy liquid analogy. That was really nice. It's a temporary picture of, I won't say experience, because experience itself is not a temporary thing. But the way in which the experience shows up, the flavor in which the experience shows up, will always be a temporary manifestation of the mind. That will look like an infinite amount of things doing it to us. Okay, that was really beautiful what you were saying there, love. There was a few things that I wrote down, and like this kind of ties in quite well with a lady that we spoke to yesterday who beats herself up about her body and stuff. We ended up talking about what is it that generally changes for people. Because I know that I still have all my mental thinking that I've always had. I know I still have all my violent thinking. I'm just going to just meet you. I still have all my violent thinking. I still have all my mad as fuck thinking. You know, my thinking didn't ultimately, to a certain degree, it's calmed down an awful lot in some degrees, but in other degrees, it really hasn't. I still have mad thoughts. But what kind of occurred, like as we were speaking to this girl yesterday, what is the difference? If it was the thoughts that truly had the power, I still have these thoughts. Surely I would still be stuck in the same place as I was 8 years ago, but I'm not. 7 years ago, it doesn't matter. But I'm not. And I think what kind of one of the effects of realizing that reality is entirely created within our mind, as I said to this girl, it looks like we are moving through reality, when in actual fact reality is moving through us. That's a very different scenario to the worldview of life. And it has to change everything. When an individual understands what that actually means, reality, we are not walking through reality. Reality is being created and moving through us. We are not moving through reality. Reality is moving through us. That has to turn life on its head. Like Kate says, it opens up your mind to deeper. If this is truly the case, what the frigging hell is going on? What is this magic of life? What is this phenomenal thing that's taking place that we're all taking for granted, getting lost in, getting so fed up with, thinking is a terrible thing? what is truly going on. And then we carried on speaking, and I know that one of the things that really changed within me was I started to understand the gift of acceptance. Far more acceptance came into my awareness. Acceptance for how I'm showing up, acceptance for how people are showing up, how the world's showing up. And in that acceptance, there's no war, there's no fight. And there's just happiness, a lot more happiness and freedom. Because I was saying to her back in the day, I used to have this kind of body dysmorphia myself. I was built like a frigging tank. I used to go to the gym and do all the creatine and protein and keep fit. And I was a big lad, but I always thought I was small. And to this day, I'll pick up a t-shirt and Jenny will go, "You'll never get into that." I'll be like, "Yeah, well." I say I still to this day see myself as smaller than what I actually am. But I was saying the difference between me now, we watched, has anybody watched that program, Naked Attraction? Thumbs up if you have. You perverts. It's brilliant. No, it was Sue, the lady who introduced me to the principles. Her and her 82-year-old husband that put us onto that. But in this thing, they said, it was such a beautiful thing. For me personally, they ask at the end of this, is that what parts of your body do you like and what parts of your body do you dislike?
Name one thing.
Name one part of your body you like and name one part of your body you dislike. And I used to hate my legs. My muscles weren't big enough. You know, my neck's too scrawny. I've got really thin wrists and all this stuff. And there was always something, Mark, bugger off. I'm not even going to read it just yet. I saw you typing away. And I realised as we were looking at this programme, I said to you, Jen, I came away and I said, I'm just really grateful for my body. And there's nothing I would change with it. There's nothing I would change. And it's not, I was saying to this girl, it's not like I've got a body off the cover of Men's Health in any way whatsoever. But I'm just really grateful for it. And I accept it for how it is. And I remember that gift of acceptance. I once went to the Manjushri. We went there yesterday to meet a friend. And Manjushri, the Buddhist temple near us. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, but there was a monk who spoke about the power of acceptance. And how the moment we learn to accept is the moment healing starts. Healing starts with acceptance. And what is acceptance? Acceptance is when we simply see the world as it stands, without judgment. To me, that's what acceptance means. Another word for acceptance you could say is presence. When we see, because as we said to this girl, you know, there's what's going on in the world, and that's happening. It's tough shit. Doing. That's doing. But the reality that we encounter as our life, as our space of awareness, that is this human being, that is entirely created by judgment. Judgment of it, belief about it, what we think about it.
One of the things I think also we did say to her is she spends a huge amount of time on Instagram and following fitness, all stuff to do with body and shape and all those kind of things. And we said, you can also do different. You don't have to keep, like, she's surprised that thinking keeps come to mind. And I think she's waiting to have an insight through the principles that means she doesn't care. We're saying that you also have free will to, like, focus your attention on something else. Stop waiting for what you think this looks like when you understand. Start doing different too. Like, we have got that power to start doing different and changing the way that we are in the world. And I think she said the next day she sent a voice message saying, I just needed the reminder. I just needed the reminder. But I think sometimes we feel like we're going to see something around the principles and then step outside of the principles and have this objective view. And I don't think we have a respect for the fact it's always going to be subjective. Like, you can't step outside and look back in an objective way. It's impossible. It's always going to be subjective. And I think that's why you start to take it less and less seriously, because you realize we haven't got like the view of objectivity. And I think there's something about that at the moment I'm realizing is, God, we can't step out of the principles. Sid was talking about all, total, everything. And so many people are kind of looking to step outside and look in from a different place, from a different medium, using something else. And it's like, no, this is what we have to create reality. This is what we've got. This is how we're going to see our insights. This is how we're going to experience our suffering. It's going to be how we experience joy. This is our medium of life. There isn't another way. And I think it can seem like, I know that when people hear people speak of the principles and speak about their changes or insights or experiences, they're like, I want that one. I want to have that experience. I want to see life how they see life. And it's like, it's impossible. You're going to see life how you see life. And
that was one of my mum's most freeing insights. It was when she went for a walk one day and she realised, she said, I cannot see the principles as Dave's seen them. It's impossible. But all along she was waiting until she saw it like I saw it, and she realised she cannot have had my experience in the same way as no other human being on earth could have Sydney Banks's experience or Jesus's experience or Buddha's experience or any other people who've stumbled across something beyond their ego. And she said in that moment, it was like that comparison this was another thing we spoke to about with this girl, was comparisons, wasn't it? And how comparison, when we're constantly trying to be like somebody else, I want this, I want that, it creates such dissatisfaction. But there's this very simple logic to the nature of reality. It's personal, it's ours. It is our reality. Nobody on earth can experience my reality. Nobody can see the world the way I see it. And I can't see the world like anybody else. Ever. No, my reality in this very present moment is entirely unique in the history of this universe. It always has been, it always will be. And it's like, just when we start to wake up to that, it's like comparison seems to get quieter. It's quieter and quieter, and we find ourselves just again coming back to that acceptance. Sorry for interrupting you, Sam.
I think that's one of the things we were trying to say as well. Like, this isn't, I'll accept when I've seen. It's like, we're going to have judgment. We're going to do comparison. We're going to have shitty days, shitty moments. And I think it can seem like so much of the time people are trying to move towards a different experience. And the lady who we met yesterday, her son had made an observation about some of the people he'd spoken to. And he just said...
This was at the Buddhist temple.
Yeah, and he said it's like they're all having an existential crisis. Like, none of them seem happy with where they're at. They're all trying to get somewhere else. And he said, why don't they just enjoy where they are? And like it made no sense to him. And I think sometimes it can be that when we then come across the principles and we hear other people speaking, we then create the comparison of what they've seen and what we've seen. And again, it creates this idea of time and a goal and a somewhere else. But I feel like it is just, like the boys yesterday kept saying, it's just about being a human. Just being here. Just do what you like doing. Like, it was so simple to them. And it was really nice to hear this lady's perspective on schooling and all of these different things. And you could hear these kids have been allowed to be completely free thinkers. Mm. And they had crazy coloured hair, and they're really
allowed to do what they found interesting, hadn't they?
And initially she was saying, no, she had worked with specialists trying to help the older one get his reading age up and all those things. And she said he's 14 now, and he's just starting
15.
to 14.
15.
He's not. He's younger than Lou.
15.
Okay.
I asked him.
I asked him.
You lied then.
Like to you.
wasn't asking
Police
for
argument
ID.
afterwards.
Yeah.
But he only
15.
just started clicking about reading and writing. It just did not make sense to him before, and he could try and he could try and he could try. And I realised how, you know, the cultural social ideas of what is an appropriate reading age, and we don't see that that's made up. Actually, we all learn at different rates, and that I know that when I got told that my reading age was under what it should be when I went to secondary school and I had to go to a special group, I felt stupid. When you feel stupid, you find it harder to learn because your mind's not really open. You don't feel like a learner. You feel like there's something wrong with you. And you can see how easy it is for us to completely blindly take on beliefs and see through them and live out of them. And that's why when we start to realise that you don't step out of the principles and have an objective view, it's all belief, it's all concept, it's all made up, it's all subjective. So in that, I think Kate was speaking to it, like the freedom to know that you can create again and again and again, because there isn't anything that we're ultimately going to be able to think as a human being that's the truth. It's always going to have our flavour. And so you see that, like you were saying to Georgia, you're driving yourself mad. Like you totally can. Like it's not that you're doing life wrong, you can totally take it, but you're driving yourself mad about something that hasn't even happened yet. And I think there is that logic, like the feeling we start to experience when we go off into an imagined future is a beautiful wake up. Like you totally live it, like we've got the feedback system. And when we stop being so afraid of what that feeling is, we end up not being so mesmerised by our own realities. What are you doing? You're going to read it out loud.
Sorry.
Colette, you've been blamed for that.
No, you haven't.
It comes up as Colette.
I saw him typing.
Colette privately typed today. You need to change the name on it, Colette, 'cause it's always Mark. We see him doing
it. He
it.
says, "You've got very small hands like a child." Thanks, Mark.
I can't remember what I was talking about.
Ah, professionals just go out the window now. Kate's had to go. Kate sent us all a message. She said, "Would love to stay and listen, but not that interesting. So, oh no, sorry. Love to stay and listen, but got to go. Still got name tapes to sew, supper to cook, school tomorrow. Thank you and lovely to see you all. XOXO," which means
Kisses and hugs.
kisses and hugs. Kisses and hugs. There you go. It's an MIA song. Yeah. Does anybody want to say anything? Anybody got anything they want to talk about? Anything they want to share? Any observations?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, thank you. Hi. No, just going back to what Kate was saying about how much harder it is, and I've said this to you two before, the difference between sharing this with people that you're not really, really close to and sharing it with people that you are really, really close to when you have an actual stake in whether they get it or not. It's such a different thing, and it's all about us. And it's just trying to remember that that's all about us and just getting out of the way so that they can just be who they are and observe it, react or not react, be or not be, just be in the isness of it and slowly watch it change when it changes of its own accord, if it's going to, not because my ego wants it to. Hard to do. I've got one son that says to me, it's like, "Mum, it's really annoying when you keep just saying it's a story." It's like, you say no, but the other one gets it. Listen to them. Go listen to Sal. It's like, you know, it's not helpful. It's really not helpful because we just get embroiled in the story ourselves.
It's easy done, isn't it?
Difficult, really easily done. Fun to watch, fun to say, hey ho, let that one go. But yeah, completely. But then over a lot of time, I've watched people close to me change seemingly by themselves.
Yeah.
just through bits of conversation. Never the conversation that I thought was the one that would change it, which, Davey, something you said I remember a while ago about sometimes it's the throwaway comment that gets somebody or whatever. You can't plan this stuff. You really can't plan this stuff.
It's a bit like what you said a minute ago, is it's always going to be about you.
Yeah.
Like your need for someone else to be different, your need for someone else's life to look different, your need for them to be okay. And
I'll be all right when you're
it looks so innocent because it looks like, oh, but it's because we care and it's because of this. But it's always about us. And I think when we start to take responsibility for that, we start accepting people as they are. And I think that's the thing that shifted for me. I know, it's just having someone see me as fine. Okay, you've got all this massive story and all these things you think are a problem, but you're fine. You're all right. And like the lady yesterday said, I want to do retreats with people and I just want to have fun and I want to take them on walks and I want to do things that we all enjoy together, but I just want to tell them they're all right. They're all right. They're going to have all kinds of mind trips, but they're all right. And I think that takes it out of needing to be somewhere else. Like, oh, I'm all right. Oh, even though I have this mad thinking, I'm all right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it takes that distance of some other version of us away. And you're like, oh, I'm all right, even though I have this mental thinking. Cool.
And people see that, bizarrely, but there's nothing you can do to make them see it. You just have to trust that they'll see it.
I don't know if...
Great thing.
I don't know, Leanne, if you're listening, but I know that when we were having conversations with you and Jessie, like at one point we kind of were like, oh, maybe it is. Oh, can I read this, Leanne?
Have you just read that?
It's almost like you're probably going to answer.
You
what
just
I'm
kind
about
of
to ask you.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of felt like at one point we bought into the story and started worrying. And then we caught ourselves and we had to apologise to Jessie and to Leanne. I said, we're really sorry, like we've got really caught in the story and we've been feeling worried. We forgot, like we forget too, like we're not immune to any of this, like we're just the same as you. And it opened up a whole different conversation, and then we got to really enjoy one another again. And then like she realises she's all right.
She's one of the best mums in the world.
But also what I've come to see, just feel like some of the decisions I've made, which have kind of been poo-pooed by, like Byron's been like telling me I'm not making the right decisions, and the professor's against this, and I let her go back to dancing before the time that she was allowed to, because it just felt right. It just felt like that was the right thing for her, and that's what she needed right there. And then she was determined, and she needed a little bit of reward, and she has flown. She has actually flown since she started it, because she's 800 grams from her safety zone, like from her weight safety zone. And
how far away was she from it, Leanne?
She was about 5 kilos. So it's been a long road, and I've learned so much, and like suddenly learning to trust myself and trust my own judgment and stop doubting everything that I do and all the decisions I make. It reflects in her, because she's more confident in me, like, and what I'm advising her, because I'm not doubting myself the whole time.
Yeah.
It was working with Jessie was.
Is.
Yeah.
Now we just chat.
Yeah.
We're just
It's been great learning from me. I've been really humbled by Jessie, and I've been really humbled by my own ego. Seeing my own ego. There was times when we've worked with Jessie and we've got scared. We've looked at this little girl who appears to be fading away into nothing in front of our eyes. Like scared, seriously scared. She's got the most beautiful big eyes you've ever seen. Stunning. These big eyes are looking back at you and you see they're full of fear. And then at one point, we just came off one of the calls and we were like, what are we doing?
Well, I think I went back to that moment of what was it that helped me?
Yeah.
Well, it's when someone else could see that I was okay when I couldn't. Like, and it wasn't a wordy thing. It wasn't said to me. It's just my first teacher, Roger, just knew that. And we went away and we're like, fuck, we forgot. We forgot she's fine.
We got scared.
And then the next time we spoke to her and we apologised, her whole face lit up.
Right.
And
I'm sorry. We got lost. We got lost in the story. We got into Kate's roller coaster. We strapped ourselves in for you next year. We went for a ride with you. Sorry about that.
it's so cool, wasn't it? She's like, yeah.
And then now you see this kid and she's happy.
She loves you too.
Oh, we adore her. And but the nice thing about happiness is when people will allow themselves to be happy, they start to make better decisions in life.
Yeah.
When we're happy, we make better decisions than we're in a fucked off mood. Decisions I make when I'm in a fucked off mood are usually poor, yeah. Like I'll start overtaking, there'll be a bloody speed camera there, and it's like. But when just to see this kid come out of that space and come and find her happiness, and it does not surprise me in the slightest that when you let her go back to dancing, it was like it allowed her to fly. I think you said that word. She's flown.
Yeah, she absolutely has.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Now this is starting to come to the end. I don't need to consider that now. And you can imagine how that must feel for Jessie, who was somebody who loved her dancing, but she wasn't allowed to dance because of her weight. She couldn't lose any more weight. And to be allowed to go back. But one thing I've loved about you, Leanne, I remember you once saying to me, when I said, I wouldn't rule out Jessie, you once said to me, I will not let Jessie go into a clinic.
Treatment centre.
And I said, well, I wouldn't rule that out. And you sent me a text and you said, that was the saying that hit me similar to Mother Teresa saying, fuck God. I think that's
Sorry, you come up with it.
It's quite straight. And I remember it being his Waco. I was like, yeah, I get it. It was like,
I think that I got petrified when you said that. It scared me more because it was like I would never have expected that from you. I've been fighting this and fighting this and fighting this, and the one place I thought I would go where people would say no, don't do it.
Yeah.
And then when you kind of said, well, maybe that's what she's going to have to do, I accepted it. And I kind of thought, well, that might be part of her journey and that might be part of what we've got to go through. And that's just the way it is. We'll come out of it stronger on the other side. But let me try, let me give it my best go to, get her better. And thank God she's well on her way. She's okay. She really is.
And we asked her last time what is it? What is it that you've been hearing? And that she said the temporary nature of experience, the thing that it passes. And I know there's been times sometimes you're like, oh, but do you want to tell them about yesterday? And she's like, oh yeah, but I'm fine now. Like, I like to see how, yes, she has had ups and downs. It's not like, I know that we've not been there 24/7 like you guys have in lockdown, and you have literally been there seeing her mood go up and down, but how she started to allow that and to notice that she can have that and she can experience it, but it will change. It's not permanent. And that in itself has given her okay, it will change.
Yeah, I'll sit this one out.
And she doesn't feel the need to then go back and tell us all the terrible times that have happened in the week. Let's sit here and tell you a funny story, or let me tell you about this. And she's hilarious. She tells us all these stories now, and we just sit there her confidence. And we've seen her really since February just change and and you can see why. I know that a lot of the early teachers on the island, it was about getting to know people recognizing their wholeness and holding that space for them to be able to see it for themselves. And I think I realized how easy it is to over teach. You want to get this message across, you want this person to see it.
When you get vested in it.
It looks so worthy and righteous, but how then that puts something on our mind and it becomes about us, like we're saying, and it isn't about us. And I think that's the beautiful thing that we will always learn. Like, I think this idea that there's someone out there that knows more than us. It sounds like you've just suddenly gone, wow, I can trust myself.
Yeah.
And I can, and that's the beautiful thing.
It's a very beautiful thing.
Because to think in any way that we'd have answers or it has to come from within us. And like my best guess for someone else's life might be completely wrong.
No, it's been a real gift to watch the change within Jessie. To see this kid who was like a rabbit in headlights to this kid who's like a stand-up comic now. I'd love it at some point for Jessie to come on and talk. And she's just one of the most beautiful human beings.
And tell stories about her poor psychologist that she had to see for how she just bang on about us, and she tells about the shoes he was wearing and the ridiculous things he said. And I remember her saying after one of those meetings, she was like teaching him the principles, and she was realizing the truth in what she'd been hearing with the principles and the false in what she was hearing at the therapist. And so it's like, you can see how we can have an idea that going to see a traditional therapist is somehow wrong, but for her it was like she got to see what's true and what isn't, and what made sense. And I think that's the thing to remember, that learning takes place.
And I mean, what I've learned over the last few months is I wouldn't give it back. As hellish as this has been, I've learned and grown huge amounts. And I'm grateful for it. I'm blessed.
That is one of the most beautiful places you can find yourself, is when you are actually grateful for the shit that's happened in life.
And I never ever thought, like when you used to say that, I never ever thought I would reach a point where I could actually say that, and I can. I think that this has been a blessing for her, because she's got this, the rest of her life, she's got this, and she'll be able to navigate the rest of her life with a whole lot more ease than if she hadn't gone down this road.
She's done a lot of learning very quickly as that kid.
And she points it out to me all the time. Like, we'll be in conversation and she'll go, Mom, you're doing it.
Yeah. What a beautiful thing to have that within your family. Jackie.
And my other older daughter's starting to show a bit of an interest as well.
Is she? You see, it's
I've sent her a couple talks.
It's one of these things, people do get interested. And I forget who we were talking to now, but patience. It's like, I know that when I always call it foie gras, and Kate and I used to have a laugh about this, but when you come across something so magical and special, and who do you want most in your life to be able to share this with? Well, of course it's your family, it's your nearest and dearest, and it's special, so you want them to have it too. And it's like, I used to call it foie gras, and I used to get hold of my family and like a goose and shove it down their necks, and of course geese don't like that. Geese hate what's dead. But with a bit of patience, people start to listen. And my family is a very different family now to what it was 8 years ago, or what it was before that 8 years ago. It's just unrecognisably different. We're all still very much out human beings, and we go in and out of all kind of madnesses, but we're a lot more tolerant, a lot more patient, and a lot more accepting. And generally, on the whole, we're a lot more peaceful and a lot more love. And I think that's the thing, you know, one thing I've seen within Jessie, it's like your love, Leanne, your love that you've shown her. You've seen your fear. You've seen your fear, and you've got lost in the fear the same as us. And then you've come back to love. And when you come back to love, that kid started to shine. That's telling. That's telling. It's like there's a real lesson in there for everybody. There was a big lesson in there for me. And I've not forgotten that.
Well, you realise you've made it about you again.
Yeah.
Like, I know I've done a whole retreat before where all of the stories it seemed that were shared were people recognising that, oh yeah, it's when I make it about me. When I make it about me. When I'm thinking about me. And it's so innocent and it's so easy to miss when it seems like it's for someone that we love.
Justified.
But you can see how we show up so differently from a place of love and acceptance than when we're scared and we're fearful and we're urgent.
Yeah.
And just to have that experience and to have learned and grown from that. And I think to be able to say that you're grateful for it, I think that's one of the things we start to realise, that there really is an intelligence to all life. And I know that when I first came across the principles, it used to feel like there was an intelligence to the good bits and the synchronicities, and when I thought it went how it should go, and then it was almost like I felt like I'd stepped out of the principles when it was going wrong. But to know that there's a deep intelligence to all life, however it's showing up, and without the judgment and the fear, we can't help but move in the other direction, which is one of love. And that place. And I know that I had a conversation with someone recently who had been an alcoholic, and then their father had died of alcohol. They were telling me about, they read a book, and in this book they heard something about accepting people as they are. And he said he got to have 2 years with his dad, just loving him, even though he was drinking. And he got to have those 2 years of connection. And he said leading up to that 2 years, he'd just been in so much judgment and always trying to change him. And he said he's so grateful that he got out of his own way and stopped making it about him, and he just loved the person in front of him. And he said it wasn't the outcome he would have hoped for, but actually he got to have those 2 years, which he wouldn't have had. He would have just had the constant battle and conflict. And I think it's that we don't know what somebody's lessons, or we don't know what's right for somebody else's life, but we can just allow them and love them. And when we show up from there, what comes through us is very different. Very, very different. Because I know that just for the small experience that we had of going, wow, that call felt tense when we were saying, you really need, it felt urgent. And then to go away and go, wow, God, we got so lost. And then to apologise to a 12-year-old and they'll be like, oh, that's all right. And then it was almost like it was nothing to her, but it was like she responded to our change instantly. And because we weren't even sure if she was going to want to speak to us again after that call. She said, all right, I'll speak to them. And we just here to apologise. And it was so cool to see. And I think that's what I love. That anyone can become your teacher. Like in that moment, Jessie really was our teacher, and I think it's always been it is always a two-way.
A humbling game, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's deep. This is a deeply humbling game. If you're not humble, if life isn't keeping you humble, I would really have a look at your ego, like it, because it's just humbling. But I love what you're saying about like, just coming back to that. The gratitude for your daughter was nearly sectioned. Your daughter was what was considered to be desperately ill, and you were getting flack off your family, you were getting flack off the professionals. But again, this isn't saying this isn't me saying everybody should do this. This isn't what I'm saying. I'm just saying what happened for Leanne, like. But you didn't have an easy time. You have not had an easy time of this. Not from your kids, not from your family, not from the professionals, not from the state as such. But to be able to look back at all that without the bitterness, without the judgment and the hatred of it all and the people, and to be able to stand there and tonight say, I'm grateful that actually took place. That, again, it's another game changer in life. When people can start to see life's challenges as, when we start to find that gratitude for life's challenges, when we actually gain the respect for the fact that through life's challenges, we grow and evolve and learn. Life starts to take on a different feel. Challenges or difficulties and start like almost, there's almost like a, what's at the end of this? I won't say you're dead chuffed about what's going on. I'm sure like people who are facing challenges are not dead chuffed about what's going on. But once we start to find that gratitude and understanding that it's through challenge that we gain deeper respect and love, and how could we ever know our true resilient, I don't even like the word resilience, unbreakable nature, unless it was ever challenged? Unless it was ever brought to our mind that we were anything but that, or that we were everything but that. It's like, I know when I look back at my life, I'm eternally grateful for every single one of the shit things that happened. And then it's like, now to meet challenges in life with that respect, that through challenge, it's through challenge that evolution actually takes place within the physical world. Why would something need to evolve if it wasn't facing a challenge? Through challenge, things evolve and they learn and adapt. Exactly the same with the mind. I just think that's something that is something to be reflective about. It's like, because when we do get reflective about the terrible times, many people don't get to experience the gratitude for the terrible times. They will stay stuck in it, reliving it over and over again, and full of hatred and remorse and guilt, or whatever the thing be. But for those lucky people who get to go through the difficult, challenging times and come out with gratitude, that has to be a gift. Something to be even more grateful for. That was beautiful, Lynn. Thank you so much, love.
Thank you.
Let's take it. Jack, I saw your hand up. We'll take a break. We'll take 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. So go and get a cup of tea. It's 1:15 on our laptop, say about 25 past. Jackie, you had your hand up just before the break. Did you want to say something, love?
Can do. I mean, it was actually in response to what Liana said.
Yeah, she's gone.
Yeah, okay. But it was when she said about being grateful, and it just suddenly hit me like a brick to go like, oh, wow, would I go back from all of this? Oh, no, not for anything. And it was just the sudden realization of the, not taking it for granted at all, but, oh, wow. Even the idea of, even that there is an idea to be thought of that is, oh my goodness, would I go back from not knowing this? I mean, in a way, it's like you've always known it when you know it, isn't it? Because you go, oh yeah, when I was little and I thought those things, or oh yeah, when this, but to actually see the dots all join up, the idea of going back was just like, it was like somebody dropped a brick on my head when she said that. So yeah, that was what I wanted to say at that point. I suppose the other thing I wanted to share was just how it was interesting this last weekend, Sal, our daughter, rang to say that she was splitting from her partner, which is a very complicated split, which I won't even go into. So it's not even as bad as it seems or anything in a way. But just how upset Jeff and I were. So upset. And it's funny how you think you're being upset for them. And it was like, actually, no, Jeff, we're not. We're really not. She's actually okay. It was even her decision. We're sad for us.
Yeah.
You know? I'm gonna go and see her on Tuesday to see what she needs and help her out. No, I'm not. I'm going on Tuesday to see the partner before I don't see them for a long time. I was just coming back to this thing of, you know, what's our story and what's somebody else's story. The fact that we're all looking out through completely different eyes, completely different perspectives. What I ever think of a situation is never, ever the reality of the situation, because there literally isn't one. There just literally isn't one. There is no objective situation anyway. It's only a situation because I'm seeing it. So, and the fact that everybody's seeing a different one. So it was just really interesting to be able literally to go, get out of my own way, go and see her, and really just be open to whatever she's saying and to whatever I see on that day, and to try and just as close as I can get, you know, without being in the way, to explore how she's seeing this and the nuances and the okayness and the threads and that it's really okay, and that it's really okay anyway, because stuff's just really okay. And it will be really okay. And I could see, and it allowed me a very different experience of the day. And that's due to this constant knowledge now that if something isn't feeling right, there's always new thinking to be had. Always. You might have to wait a bit. You might not be able to access it at the time. You might just go, okay, I'm feeling really shit about this. But even just knowing that there's a million other bits of new thinking to be had, even if you can't access them, is enough to get out of your own way. So it was just interesting how different that day might have been a few years ago and how different it was now. And yeah, the idea of going back and not knowing is just hilarious. Oh my goodness me. Yeah, no, not happening.
Very fortunate.
Yeah, but very, very interesting. And interesting going without my own way also allowed us to have the kind of conversations that included all of this, because she's been coming at it from a different direction, but she's open. But I don't feel, it's like you were saying, that foie gras, that's brilliant, Dave. That's just fab, the idea of just forcing. It's like, yeah, I get that. But just seeing what happens when you don't do that is really interesting as well.
Yeah.
And just knowing that that's such a better place, feels a better place. It's got to be better because it feels better.
Yeah. I know we've had community groups, and we've perhaps had a psychologist come in, and I've kind of felt the urgency for them to
hear something.
Yeah.
Shittest group you could imagine.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, there was one where you literally just looked at that one person, the entire group. You didn't let anyone else speak, and you literally just talked at them really intensely for about an hour. On the break, you kind of realised, and then you just did it again after the break. But it was the best learning.
It was great learning.
I know other people that have had similar experiences where they don't want to teach anymore. I know loads of people that have had an experience where they felt they messed it up or got it wrong. But it's like, it's all learning.
There's no one thing, and then I'll mute myself again. I was doing the course that I was telling you about. I'm running this 6-week course on stories we tell ourselves, principles, whatever it is. And I'd made the decision that I was going to just turn up and be, which is why I said to everybody, no, I'm paying a tiny bit for this, but not a lot. I want to just see what happens when I turn up. So it's a bit like that thing again, if I don't really know what's working and what's not, but we're on the 4th week and we went round and everybody said something, but it's on the 3rd week that was interesting, because 2 women we're just like, well, it's like, I mean, I've noticed that, I'm sorry, I can't, and I just cracked up laughing, and they're going, why are you laughing? I'm kind of like, I'm sorry, but I sounded like that for a year. So that's how long you've got to wait before you can get to the end of a sentence about any of this. And even then, it's only because you just go, oh, sorry, I'll just say whatever comes out of my mouth. But just really interesting watching other people have that sense of something, but not able to articulate it at all. And then the following week starting to say, I've noticed that I don't do that and that. And it's just fascinating to watch people listen to other people say those things. So it is a learning process, and I can't equate that to anything I'm doing apart from turning up.
This is it.
I
You can
don't know
guide.
what to call it.
you can guide, and that's it. And people who hear, and those that don't. It's not that the people who hear are any different to the people who don't. They're exactly the same.
It's true, and it's about just being yourself, which then becomes without having any, isn't it? I've just decided to just relax and just be me, and then it doesn't become an issue about whether they get it or not. I can't have a stake in that because it's not for me to do. Like you say, it's coming through. Life comes through us, not something special coming through me, just life.
That's
so
right.
Yeah.
Which is special in its own essence.
Yeah, you see, I can't articulate it even now, but it's fun.
Oh, you can't. It's dead simple. You cannot.
No, you can't.
You know, there's this.
It's fun.
There's a talk I listened to, and it's this man who studied near-death experiences, and Dr. Bruce Grayson in America, and he said, you know, people go into these spaces of near-death, or some people go entirely into death, and they'll find themselves back in their body for whatever reason. They back in the human form and back into mortal. And he said, we'll ask them, what's it like? People will ask them, what's it like? And they'll go, couldn't tell you. I can't explain it. And they'll go, great, tell us all about it. This is what he says. Tell us all about it. He said, and then they'll start to put it into words as best they can. And it's not that they're lying, it's just, it's not it. And the words can't, you know, the thing ultimately that the principles is pointing to is not something you can understand with your mind. Your mind is being driven by it.
A word on how people pick this up. I tried to explain to the group in the first week. I tried to say to them, because they were sort of saying, right, we're going to go away and we're going to try and do this thing. And I'm going, no, don't try. Please don't try and do anything. It's like you circle around it. And each time you circle around it's like spiral learning. Everybody thinks learning's linear, but this is like, it's like revisiting, and little drops go in. And then slowly it all starts to make sense, like you're filling in the dots randomly on a picture at different places. And there's something about that. And there's an anthropologist, I think I mentioned him to you as well, and you mentioned this guy called Tim Ingold. And he actually talks about this kind of learning in different cultures and how different cultures, and he calls it wayfaring. It's wayfaring, when you just travel round and round and you pick up and you link to the stories that are there. But the learning is not about cause and effect and moving on one thing to another. It's literally about just passing the same place again and again and again, which is what we do in our lives, in our environments.
It's like you often describe it as unlearning, don't you?
Mm.
Like the greatest obstacles we face are the ones that we've created within our own mind.
When you were speaking, Jackie, I filmed a training probably about 10 years ago with George Pransky, and he asked for volunteers during this 3 or 4 day training to sit at the front and kind of bring something to him that they'd normally take to a therapist or a coach or whatever. And there was this one lady who basically couldn't rest until she realised what her life purpose was. And she'd been driving herself nuts trying to figure out what was her life purpose. And she couldn't rest and she couldn't be happy until she'd realised what her life purpose was. And it was so interesting because you could see that he gave her the space and time to communicate what her issue or a message or a problem was. And he just sort of sat back in his chair for a bit, and you could see that he didn't have a script of what he was going to say. And then what came out of his mouth is, so what makes you think that we have life purpose? And you could just see her just sort of stop dead. And well, I've read many books about it. Okay, so that's somebody else's idea that you think is true. She just completely unraveled in front of the room, because it was like she'd never questioned.
Yeah.
And he wasn't telling it either way. He wasn't trying to say we do or we don't have a life purpose. But it was in like one moment, seeing through the thought of, in her mind, she could not rest until she realised her life purpose. And she was missing life because she was just so, she said, this has been driving me mad. And you could see it had been driving her mad. But it was so cool to see someone just suddenly realise how they blindly lived out of belief. And then like someone else would go up. And a lot of the time when you got to sit and observe these kind of one-to-ones, and they'd only normally do like 20 minutes with someone, you'd see that, and I think Aaron Turner speaks about this, when he did his internship with the Pranskys, he was looking for the first year, what is the technique? What is it that they're doing with these people? And he said it took him about a year to realise it was almost like just be present in the moment with someone in front of you and see what occurs. But in his mind, it had to be more complicated than that. And I think when we think we have something to teach people, and that's the way that we show up with them, it's very different than having a conversation, listening and seeing what occurs. Because we already have in our mind what they need to know, or what we've learned that's really helpful that person should see, because their life would be so much easier.
Yeah.
And I think I feel really grateful for the experience of being a videographer within the principles in those early days, because I got to experience, my job was to film. I wasn't even there as a participant. So it's like this really neutral place to watch the questions and all of those things. But I could see how easy it would be to kind of think, oh, they're doing something there. They've got a technique, or
there's something that I'm not.
Yeah, but you could see that George was just being George. He wasn't trying to be Sid. He wasn't trying to be. He was just showing up, and that's what occurred to him. And I know that how easy it would be then to want to. All right, and now I'm going to just sit out and show up, and then I don't teach like that. I don't show up like that, and I think that's the beautiful thing, that when we can take all of that off of our mind, and we're with people, it's amazing what comes out. And I think it's the expectation in those early days of not wanting to get it wrong, and I know that I often would be having conversations with people, but if they said anything that I thought slightly went against the principles or wasn't in line, I was always trying to, and I think you learn to be able to listen without trying to teach or point out where someone's not seeing. And then you can still have an open dialogue. And I think that's the beautiful thing. It's like, it's a learning on the job kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's ever going to be a point where you can say you're the expert and you've got all the answers.
By definition, that doesn't work, does it?
Because every person and moment is unique. But there is, like when you were talking about that, just the circular learning and falling into, I remember at one point what occurred to me, it's like, it's almost like the insight that we're having it's the same insight. So the content's different, but the insight is that there's one source. There's one source for all experience. Everything else is made up. And like, we get to see that in different ways, but it's almost like the same. And you realize it, oh, and it's true there. And you think you've realized it, and then you're, oh no, and it's true there. But that's why I think it often seems like you're revisiting the same thing, because really there's, most religions, philosophies that Sid would speak, there's one truth. And we're all it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's what we keep getting glimpses of, that one truth, but it will be disguised as content, but it would never be the content.
That's all the separation, all the bits. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, Jenny. I love it. And what you said about George, I know listening to George, I always love seeing what comes out of his mouth, because it's never what you expect. And it was a similar anecdote where somebody had said, I've been procrastinating about this book for years. It was, it was going to take a year to write. I've been at it for 5 years now. And he just looked through and said, has it ever occurred to you that maybe just underestimated how long it was going to take you to write it? And it is just that shift of things. But I love what you just said about all the insights being the same insight. You're so right. And, well, obviously, but it's so interesting that that's what's going on.
But I mean, that's just how I've seen it. I'm not saying that's true, but what makes sense is if it's just, there is one truth, we're getting
absolutely
a sense of that one truth. And then we put a flavour to it. We often try and put to our insights, where really I think the shift is in the falling away.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
To the not stuff.
You follow threads, then it comes back to the not stuff every time. It's really weird.
We had a lovely conversation with Catherine, and I remember you describing how you'd had a bit of an awakening within your sleep, and how in one moment, you explain. Would you be happy to explain that, Catherine? I'm gonna unmute you. Are you gonna do it, Colin? Or do you want me to do it?
Done it.
Yeah, without going on too long about it and just repeating everything, I was just finding it really, really difficult. I was going through a lot of grief, looking after a lot of people who died in my life. My mum, my dad, my stepdad, Colin's heart attack. I was really, really ill. And my son and my daughter were falling out. They were squabbling, and it just came. I'd just had such like about 5 years of it, and I think it was New Year's Day this year. I went to bed feeling absolutely fed up to the teeth. I think I explained to you, didn't I, that just before Christmas I was that fed up that I decided, right, fuck Christmas, can't say it any other way. Tree went to skip. I said, take that to skip to Colin. Tree went to skip, trimmings went, everything went. Christmas cancelled, Christmas dinner cancelled. And I just thought, I'm sick to death of this. So I went to bed at New Year feeling like this, and I just woke up and I thought, what's happened? Because it was just like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said to you, did I say to you, do you want coffee or something? Anyway, we ended up having coffee in bed, 3 o'clock at morning, and Colin sat there with me, who something happened to me. I don't know what, whether it's an awakening, I think it must have been, because I just woke up laughing and crying and bordering on hysteria, I would say. And I was just like laughing with you, wasn't I? And I was saying, are you ready for me? You've got a new wife. I've had enough of this. I'm sick to death of this. This is it. I'm moving forward. Stuff the past. I've had it. I'm having no more. And that's it. And I've kept it up ever since. And I just decided, enough's enough. And that is it. And I've moved forward, and I wasn't happy before because of all the grief and everything. But now I'm loving life because I've just somehow something clicked in my head and I've put it all behind me. And when you were, something resonated a bit when you were talking about, when we've just been on about how you can look at things differently and you're grateful. That's it, you're grateful. How can a daughter possibly turn around and say that they're grateful that the mum's terminally ill with cancer? But I was, simply because I'd watched my mum 5 years with Alzheimer's. She was just getting to the stage where she was losing her dignity, and I know that with my mum, that would be the worst thing that she'd ever want, to lose dignity. And we found out that she'd got cancer, and she died 2 weeks after diagnosis. And she died really, really quickly. But it was merciful for my mum. So I was so glad that that came along, because it stopped my mum going through all that indignity. So how I could be grateful for her getting cancer, it sounds stupid, but I was, because I thought that was merciful for my mum. And I think that's it, really. I know you know yourself, there's an awful lot more, but for me to repeat it all will be about 12 o'clock.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. And I think what Catherine clearly demonstrates, you hadn't come across the principles at this point, had you?
No. I think I did the principles backwards. So I did it. I had all this awakening, and then I had no idea what had happened to me. And then Colin first, we were reading Sasha's books, weren't we? Genevieve, or Becoming Genevieve, or whatever. And Sasha had mentioned your retreats, that she'd been on to your retreat. So we were watching your videos on YouTube, and then we decided to come and meet you. Yeah. And it was all through that. And so through learning what we've learned so far about the 3 principles, it's made me understand what happened to me. So I'm such as like, I feel that I understand what happened now, whereas before I was just totally confused, thinking I'd lost the plot, and Colin did as well. When I explained it to my friends, and I said, I just lost the plot, and they've no idea what happened to me, but they've seen a difference, in a big, big way. So whatever happened, it was good.
There's many people come to the principles like that. Who, one of our friends, Terry Rubenstein, who's the creator of iHeart. I don't know if people are familiar with iHeart. It's going into schools now. She very similar. She had an experience. They came across the principles and went, "Oh, this is a language to describe what happened for me." And you know what ultimately what Sid was pointing to was there is this deep intelligence behind everything. Everybody is it. There's this infinite, phenomenal something you cannot get. The human mind cannot get its head around infinity to begin with. And the way that we work is we are guided by thought, and thought is this infinite realm of potential possibilities. And it just so happens that at some point during some people's lives, the majority of people's lives, they're touched by this kind of, some people call it awakening, epiphany, enlightenment moment, or insight, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But they're touched by this realization. And for whatever reason, this realization can change your life in a moment. And what tends to happen is the individual will fall out of that belief system that they held. It will reorient, it will reorder their mind. The power of that space within consciousness is such that it will reorder the mind to one where we experience a totally different reality. You can't get your head around it. You can't plan it. You can't create it. As an ego, as a Dave or whatever, I can't do any of that stuff. I can't do that. It's not under my control. But I'm thankful that we all have this capacity, because it's through this capacity that we're all starting to learn about something. And just so happens that, like Sid would say, all you have to do is listen. Find somebody who talks truth and just listen to them. And within yourself, you will start to waken up to what truth actually is. And you will realize it was always you. It was you minus the bullshit you tell yourself. It's you minus the bullshit you tell other people. It's you minus the bullshit that you think about the world. It's the ever presence. It's always there. And now, when you told us that story, Catherine, it was so beautiful. There's somebody who went from cancelling Christmas to, within a few days, suddenly, within a moment, just going, I've had enough of that. Not something you could manufacture. I'm sure you did not see it coming when you went to bed. No. That's beautiful. Thank you. Mark, I'm really intrigued. How's your colouring in going? Can't hear you.
It's double colouring in. I've been told off today.
Have you?
So yeah, I'm in what's it called when you have to do double colouring? Detention. I'm doing work for Colette. She's been telling me to do stuff. So I've not been listening to a word of it.
You've been keeping you busy, Colette?
Yeah.
Has it been good tonight?
I've enjoyed it. Do you two want to say out?
I was listening then for the first minute, and yeah, because we've always been guided. That's the big thing. When I first got this understanding, I've just realised, yeah, all my life I've been guided. It's always been there. But even before I was born, it's with me now. It's always been there. It's just realising that, isn't it? It's just then. It's like, oh yeah, God's always been with me. That's it.
Common sense.
What?
Common sense.
Yeah. I've got more common sense than you, though.
I'm sure you do. I wouldn't know. What are you colouring in, Mark?
I'm doing stuff. I'm doing work. Stuff nothing to do with anyone else but me.
Don't really show off on here.
Sounds like you're wrapping presents.
Yeah, they are. They're all for you. All for you, Jen. Loads and loads of presents for you. I've been doing it for 2 hours now. Just wait till you get to Christmas. You'll see this and you'll say, fuck Christmas.
Right, do you want to say out?
Your auntie died, didn't she? So,
I'll just speak about. Well, it was. Yeah, my auntie did die last night. Yeah, after we got told about a week ago she was on her way out, and she did last a week of fighting it. But the interesting thing is I wasn't upset. It's like I love her and, you know, I'll miss her. But I had this overwhelming peace about it, that she'd passed on and she was out of pain. She's lived a brilliant life. She's 87. And when she died, just this lovely peace came over me, and I didn't cry at nothing, because I just knew she was okay and she hasn't gone anywhere. And that, from when my uncle died a few years ago, I was just in bits, crying my eyes out, all about me. But this time it was so different, and it was really nice, to be honest.
You've got a lot more heartless now, haven't you?
Shut up. No, so I had, yeah, I just felt more connected to her than ever. Shall I say that? That's what I felt. Yeah.
That's beautiful. It is quite an interesting thing. It's like, to me, when you start to wake up to life and see the massive game it is, the massive uncomprehendable nature of consciousness, it's like you start to wake up to life. You have to start waking up to death at the same time, and seeing the complete nothing to fear in it. You know, we don't come from a culture which doesn't fear death. We come from a culture which tries to keep everybody alive, because being alive is the right side. And in such, if it was my loved ones, I'd probably be doing exactly the same. But we fear death. And I think this conversation really does have the power to reorientate our relationship with death. You know, it comes back to acceptance again. When we start to accept death, it's like, then you can start to live. You will start to live more truthful, more honest, more spontaneous, because you have the acceptance of death. But in the non-acceptance of death, in the fear of death, you have a fear of life, because in the back of your mind there's always this idea that, oh, it's going to come to an end, and there's this fear built. Or perhaps we don't comprehend it at all, we don't ponder it in the slightest, so we create this illusion we're going to live forever, and therefore we've got all the time in the world to find happiness and do all the things we actually truly what makes our hearts sing in this lifetime. And we miss life. I know that's something that within you, Colette, and when as you've gone along in this, it's like I've seen you have some beautiful insights, and to start to hear you say that tonight about the beauty in your auntie's passing, and you never felt more connected. You know, many people feel so guilty because they didn't cry at the time, or they force themselves to cry. They force themselves to, I should feel like this. I think this is another nice thing. It's like when you start to wake up to this, you don't live in the judgment of how you should or shouldn't be. You just are. Mm. And that again changes everything. That's another game changer, just to be as you are. Sometimes I'm in a really fucking shit mood.
I was thinking about when my ex-father-in-law passed away. Rudy and I had spent a lot of time visiting with him, because he was closest to us in the last couple of years. So it's probably every other day, sometimes every day, we needed to go in and visit. And I was really surprised actually at how much I cried. Like, I didn't think I would. It was more than I had for grandparents or anything, and it surprised me. But it was fine. Like, I burst into tears in the middle of the supermarket if I saw lilies, because we always took him lilies and things like that. But it was really nice that I didn't think I should be something different than that, because I knew something about the principles. And I was actually grateful to be able to cry and experience, because I know that before coming across the principles, I was always trying to manage my feeling, and I didn't do crying, I didn't do anger, I didn't do those feelings. And for me, what showed up was the ability to grieve and feel sad and not have to be anything other than that. So it's so unique, and it's not, you can't get it wrong. It can't be anything other than what it is. So I think that's the nice thing to know, because I know that Jack Pransky had a similar experience when, I can't remember if it was when he lost his mother or his father, but he fell into this deep peace. And Rudy had heard him tell this story very early on in his understanding of the principles. Then when his mum died, he was like, I just feel peace. I just feel peace. I feel peace. I feel peace. And it's like a mantra. And he didn't. And it took about 9 months of him saying he felt peace, but actually being incredibly grumpy and depressed and arsey, to suddenly realise he didn't feel peace at all. He was freaking angry and he was sad, and he had about a month or so of just really feeling, and then it's like it passed. But he was trying to be he was trying to be Jack. He wanted Jack's experience because he thought that meant that's what it means to understand the principles. So as soon as we create this idea of a known of how we should be, we can hold ourselves to that and judge ourselves. But I think just knowing that we're allowed to feel, and if it's peace, then we're grateful. If it's grief, then we can be grateful. It's like there isn't a perfect way.
No.
It's so unique in how it shows up. I think that's the thing I know that I've realised again and again. The stories that people share are to allow people to see that we don't know. We don't know what's going to show up. Like Jack was so surprised about his experience of loss, like completely surprised. But then when you try and do that experience in your own life, it doesn't work.
No.
Because it was unique for Jack. And I think that's something that I've really been grateful to have seen, because I know that I've done it over so many things when I've heard other teachers speak. Oh, right, in this situation, then you should see that it's thought, so you should be this way.
Yeah, that's
and it
one
becomes
thing
very cognitive.
One of the things we really try and steer people away from, the idea that you should know it's thought. You know, or the fact it is just a thought. No, it's not. It's reality. It's not just a thought. It's the magnitude of the universe, the force behind the universe creating an experience. It's not just an anything. It's a phenomenal. And it's like, this has never been something to which to kind of manipulate the mind with, to kind of mind hack or anything like that. This has only purely been a description, and the description itself is simply words to try and point people to this deeper space within our being that is not visible to the everyday reality of the senses. It is not within the physical body. It's within the beingness of all existence, everybody. And
But it gives you the freedom to be yourself. That's what this does.
yeah.
It gives you the freedom to be just yourself and not worry about what anyone else thinks of you, and not what you have to be, and you have to act like this, act like that. I'm just going to be, and if sometimes I'm pissed off, I'm pissed off, and sometimes I'm happy, but I don't dwell on it anymore. Why am I pissed off? Why am I happy? I'm just being me. And that's what everyone's looking for, isn't it? To be themselves. But they all put on this front all the time, or I have to be scared, I have to be this, or I have to cry when someone dies, or, you know, and it's massive, just being yourself. It sounds really weird, I just want to be myself, but that's what everyone's looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, it's back to acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kate, I loved it when you came on just then. You looked like you were eating a tub of Ben and Jerry's, and you looked so guilty the moment you realised you'd actually clicked the camera on.
I know, I was just stuffing my face. Oops. I was actually just going to say, are you finishing now? Do you finish it now?
I'll finish the next few minutes, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say about, just that, because do you remember I had that, just when you're talking about death, and I had that realisation when I was with you two. And I just, and it was quite funny because you were driving us in the pouring rain up those little roads, those wiggly roads, and I was actually feeling really car sick in the back at the time. And then I just had this thought, and it just came to me, and it was that because my dad died when I was 21, and he got Parkinson's disease, and he was very ill, and so, and I never really talked about it in the end, and he took all these, you know, crazy concoction of drugs, and so he did go a bit sort of doolally, tried to take himself off in the ambulance and did all sorts of crazy things, and he ended up taking his own life. And I spent sort of 25 years or something never being able to talk about this. And then when I sat in the car, and the reason I sat in the car feeling car sick, and it's pouring rain, and it was the last day that we were there, and I thought, and this thought came to me, and it was like, the reason why you haven't been able to talk about this is because you had created this reality around what happened. And you'd imagined, you know, that when Dad died, he was wretched, and it was awful, and it was traumatic, and he was alone, and so this reality was so real that I could never talk about it because it would just be too upsetting. And the fact that I'm talking about it now is quite, you know, I'm quite impressed so far. I'm doing well. And so then when I was in the car, it was like there was this sort of presence, sort of. So then I thought, hang on a minute, Kate, that's not, who you weren't there. You know, you were at university, you weren't even there when Dad died. And so who says that's true? And yet you've created this reality, and you've lived this thought for 25 years or something. And that moment in the car, in the rain, feeling car sick, I was like, that isn't even real. It's not real. I just made that up, and it's created all this feeling, and it's made me never talk about it ever. And then I thought, you know, and because I let it go, I didn't manipulate it. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't try and go, oh, you know, maybe it was, I didn't do anything with the thought, but a new one came in, and it just popped into my head. And I thought, maybe Dad saw this, you know, maybe, because you hear about people getting lucid before they die, and I just thought, and I think, you know, I just thought maybe he saw something, maybe he, you know, felt the universal intelligence that we don't know about. Maybe he felt the love, the peace, you know. I don't know, I wasn't there, but then that thought started to grow, because and it felt nice, and it wasn't like I made up this thought, it just came in. And then when I was sitting in the car, it was almost like Dad was there going, hallelujah. It's taken you a while, Kate. And then it was like, right, tell Dave and Jen. And I went, no. I was saying to him, I had this whole thing in my head going, no, I don't want to tell Dave and Jen. I haven't talked about this 25 years. Don't make me tell Dave and Jen about this. And it was like, no, go on, you've got to tell them. Because then it's, you know, and then I told you both about it. And now, since then, it's just, I actually told a friend of mine, I don't need to talk about it, but I told a friend of mine, I said, I just happened to tell her, she's a friend who's training to be a counsellor. And I said, you know, I've carried this around, and I've never talked about it because it has been too painful. And now I can, you know, and I told her what happened. And she said, oh, Kate, she said, that's a real journey. You know, that's taken a lot of work. You've worked hard on that, haven't you? And I went, no, I haven't worked on anything. I haven't done anything. I've just seen what I did. You know, I created something and it wasn't real. And that created that whole feeling. And I didn't need to think about it, analyze it, and work on it or do anything with it. I just had to recognize what happened. And then the feelings all changed. And now I can tell all of you about something that I could never talk about without getting incredibly upset about, because now I think maybe it was lovely for Dad. Maybe, who knows? I mean, there's so much more of that. Who knows? Who knows? And we can't know.
No.
But if something makes us feel a bit nicer, then I'll go with that.
I think there's this what we have here, what Sid brought to the world, was such a phenomenal gift. you came to us, Fix Georgia. And it was like, she's there. Hi, love you loads. What time is it, Georgia?
Look at mouthing it.
You came to Fix Georgia, and if somebody's prepared to listen, if somebody's open to listening, they too can hear. And this is relevant for every single human being on earth. And when people start to hear you, see that it doesn't matter what the problem, it's always the same thing. Every single problem on earth is exactly the same thing. You know, that's what people come to us with, like Leanne's daughter eating, and we have people with depression and addiction, all kinds of people showing up in all these different ways. But it's always the same thing. It is the mind dreaming the reality that they're experiencing, the mind thinking, the mind holding on to beliefs. And until we actually become aware of the belief, it's completely invisible as a belief. It's just reality. It's just the way the world is.
Yeah, because there's even beliefs that you're aware it's a belief, but you're not really, because you think it's true.
Yeah.
So you still, even ones that really don't create nice things in your life. Like, I know there's certain things that I believe which create a lot of discomfort, but I can't make myself not believe it. But that's the cool thing. Like, we think we get so clever with this, but it doesn't matter what we think we know. Change happens when it happens. And like, there's often people will say, there's no point coming to this conversation if you're listening to change someone else. And it's like,
That's a
actually,
belief.
what belief? Because you sat there, Kate, and listened, and got to see you over 4 days just completely change and share things, and like your whole story about your dad. It's like, wow, suddenly people say you can't change the past, but it's like suddenly your past looked different because you'd recognized it was a story. It wasn't the truth, which is how, with a new perspective, everything can look different. So even things that have actually happened can suddenly appear different. So we're never stuck with anything, because it is all coming from the same place. And that place has the ability for anything, for newness.
That's right. It will show up in any way, but it will always show up as life.
Because I always remember I did a 4-day intensive with Linda Pransky, and then I think about 6 weeks afterwards, we had a meet up, and I went to sit with her for an hour just to see what was different. And it was only in that she was asking what's different, and I just started laughing. I was like, it's like my past has been neutralized. I could literally think about anything which I'd spent years in therapy talking about and crying about, and it was the most painful thing, and the teacher that did this to me, and when my sister did this. I could think about or talk about any of that stuff without the feeling. And I think that's one of Sid's quotes, is if you can see the object without the feeling, you're mentally free. And you can see that it isn't even the content. It's what we think it means. It's our level of consciousness when observing, however you want to describe it. But that's how nothing needs to change, but everything can look completely different with a new understanding or new perspective. And I think your story really demonstrates that.
Katie, Susan, do you want to say anything? That's a no from Susan.
Katie's not even listening.
Katie's just
She's
left
just
her name
pretending
on.
to be there.
Yeah.
I sent your certificate today, Katie.
To the wrong person.
With the wrong name on it. She's not there. I'll text her after this.
Well done. You got your cycling proficiency. It's on its way. So thank you, everybody. That was really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that, Carl. That was really nice. Kate, thanks for opening that up for us, love.
And loads of love, Georgia.
Loads of love, Georgia.
Looking forward to hearing how your new school is.
Yeah, keep doing your Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, keep sending us the videos.
She's in a mask.
No, she's not in a mask.
Oh.
I said she is smiling. She's smiling away, and she's about to go to school tomorrow. So, you know.
Oh, have fun, love.
And Charlie, you're just being weird, so go away. you want to do that dance again in front of everybody? No? Oh.
Don't worry, Kate. Sometimes when we're doing these groups, especially when we're down at my dad's, we'll be doing this, and then there's like these big French windows, and he'll be doing dances and pulling faces at us on the other side, trying to make us laugh.
Yeah, they never grow out of it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for tonight. Mum, do you want to say out? Bless you.
No.
I've just found the unmute button, actually. There you go.
There you go. Miracles can happen.
Miracles can happen. The thing about death is that there is a peace in that. Even before I came across the principles, when my parents died, there was a peace in that. I sometimes felt really guilty about feeling that peace, but as you say, they weren't suffering anymore. And I know that every single day that they walk with me, and they're in me because I'm made of them. And that's always the way it'll be. And I love that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mum. That's beautiful. Well done with the mute button.
And the video.
And the video, you're doing very well.
Yes. I'll soon be able to order my own stuff on the internet, won't I?
Nah.
Right.
You might be able to.
I might.
Thank you, everybody. I hope we did record that. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Just sending you all loads of love. When's the next community group?
2 weeks.
The retreat has been moved.
And we moved it, and then Kate, being very clever, told us that we moved it to half term, so we're probably going to change it again. So please bear with us. We will get some definite dates.
We're going to get a retreat.
And then we are also going to inquire about whether or not we can have it in person, what the rules will be looking like in end of October time, and see what that would be like. But
so there could be a potential for an in-person retreat in Grasmere, but as it stands, probably 80% more likely
online.
It's going to be an online thing. But with a view to next year, hopefully we'll do some in-person retreats because we always love those. Anything else to play? No, just thank you. Thanks for being part of this. It's been really nice. Kate, thanks for opening. And Katie, your cycling proficiency is on its way. And thank you everybody for sharing tonight. It's been really beautiful. And we'll see when's the next community group.
2 weeks.
2 weeks time. Don't know what day.
I think it's the 16th. No, I don't know if that's right.
3 + 14 = 17th.
17th. I think I'll put the 16th on there.
17th. Next one's on the 17th of September. Cool. Right.
Yeah.
I'll unmute everybody. You can all say goodbye. Oh, let Jenny do it because I can't do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Are you farting now, Charlie?